Parenting. This is Sam. Sam's 22 months yesterday. He's our first child. And already in 22 months, I have experienced many of the things that I've heard about in parenting, although I know that there are many interesting things to come. And I wanted to share this picture, first of all, because to let you know how intelligent Sam is, he likes to eat now, but he also likes to save for later. I don't know if that's a common trait. He likes to keep something for a snack later on. But it's been pretty cool to become a parent and to have a 22-month-old and to see and to kind of project, as we have all our young adults in the program, and I speak with all of our parents, to try to guess what it's going to be like in 16 or 17 years. And there's two stories that I'd like to share because I think that they relay the importance of the skills that we help our students develop, which I think are actually very similar to the skills needed as a parent in my limited exposure so far. The first story was before Sam was born, and I was traveling for work. My wife was down visiting some family in Florida, and I was doing a session with a corporate group, which is how I actually make a living. And I got a text, and I could see that it was my wife, but I don't see what it says. I opened my phone during a break, and it said, "I think I just had a miscarriage." Get emotional in public, sorry. I think I just had a miscarriage. And that was like one of a handful of times in my life that I've ever felt my heart literally hit the bottom of my stomach. Anyways, I'm not emotional talking one-on-one. It's only in groups, by the way. That was the first time that I felt that, and I kind of understood what I've heard from a lot of parents about some of the trials and tribulations of parenting. And the second story was when Sam, one time I was having, I think, a bad day, trying to change his diaper, and he was flailing his legs, as you know they do sometimes, and I just couldn't handle it anymore, and he was naked, and I took him and I put him in his crib, and I left and I shut the door. And I felt terrible about it, but I opened the door, and he had peed on the floor. I assume based out of fear. And I felt like the worst human being of all time. And these are maybe sound like strange stories, but I think they're important for two reasons. Number one, similar to the importance of having interest as the basis for why we pursue education and career, there's no material outcome or gain by being a parent, I think, as you can all probably understand at this point, and as I've heard at length from my parents. There's no material benefit. It's not something that you do because you think there's something waiting for you at the end that's material or status or power. It's just for the satisfaction, for the DNA that tells you this feels good sometimes. That's the only reason that you do it. It's the only reason you do it. The other part that was important that I recognized in going through these events and hearing others who have similar stories and listening to parents is the coping skills that I believe I have developed over the years that helped me not only identify that that was maybe a mistake to do that in that instance when I put him in the crib, but to understand and to separate myself from the thing that just happened and not to judge myself wholly and completely for it, but to understand that that was a mistake and I'm not a perfect person, and to learn from it and do better next time. And I don't know how many of you are psychologists or social workers or live in this world where we talk about these things a lot, but these are really important skills that in working with students and adults for many years now, I've learned we don't talk a whole lot about, and especially in parenthood. And I know a lot of these stories because parents tell them to me. And almost every parent that I meet, I find feels like their son or daughter is one person who's struggling in a sea of people who are doing brilliantly and are going to be hugely successful by the time they're 21. So as I told the students a minute ago, thank you for coming here. If you're here tonight, in my opinion, it puts you ahead of the curve just to have the courage and the curiosity to explore something like this, which is actually pretty rare. So thank you for coming. And I hope that made sense. I don't know if it did or not. You can tell me a little bit later. But interest and coping skills are the two most important things. And this is not Jay, it's my own experience also in my own education, but the research, the surveys, those are the two things that people need to do well in university or college, in fact in life, but we're talking about post-secondary tonight. So what I hear continuously from educators at the secondary level and from professors in university and college is that students do not have these two things. generally speaking. Older students often do. Students that are coming out of grade 12 into their first year of undergraduate studies, by and large, do not. And I experienced it myself when I went back to school at 30. I was surrounded by people who were just looking for a piece of paper. It's the only reason they were there. So it's really important, and I mentioned these early on because these are two of the things largely that we help students build, and they're not often spoken about in our society. They are incredibly important as a career development specialist. These are two things that will help young people do well and thrive in anything that they do. The truth, though, is that and I'm sorry to start on such a pessimistic note. Those who know me know I'm a very optimistic person. That's why I'm here, and we'll share lots of great stories later. But I found that it's really important to set the scene for people because I think a lot of people don't understand quite the degree to which the challenges are happening in post-secondary and for our young adults. So, a couple of things. Why did we start this program? I'll tell you a little bit about my story in a second, but here are some items that have compounded the experience of young people today in the last 2 decades. Number one, if you can think back, for those of you that did post-secondary education, if you think back when you were leaving high school, our memories are terrible, but how did you feel? Think about that. And think about, did you feel a lot of pressure to name the thing that you would be doing for the rest of your life? Maybe you did. I would argue, from my own experience, it was a very small percentage of the population who felt that way, or who were encouraged to go into university or college and say, I'm taking this thing so that I can do this thing. It's just not how it works. It was much more exploratory back in the day, back in the good old day. Pressure is up. Students see all around them that everyone's super successful, everyone lives in an infinity pool on Instagram, and that's by the age of 21. So if you want that when you're 21, they're good at doing the math, even if they're not in calculus. They say 21, 4-year degree, I'm gonna do this, oh my goodness, I'm 17, I'm already behind. This is something that happens all the time. So way more pressure. Based on the research and my own experience again, less responsibility. And the research shows that young people today don't work as much. Fewer young people have jobs. They're doing fewer chores around the house. What they're doing is studying for days on end, and then being on Snapchat. And that's their world. That's where they live, for the most part, not everybody. But more pressure, less responsibility. So if you can think about it in the context of there's more pressure and the coping skills because they haven't experienced the same types of things by the time they go into university, they're less capable generally of handling difficult things when they come at them in the post-secondary realm. Technology, we could talk for days about whether it's positive or negative. Obviously, in my opinion, it's both, but there is no secret in my world, having met thousands of students in the last couple decades, there is definitely an impact of the way we communicate today on young people. We talk a lot about social media in the program, positive and potentially negative outcomes. So there's lots of pressure. They feel, I met all kinds of students that tell me, well, my parents say they want me to be happy. That's what they say to me. They say it and I hear it. But what I really think is that they want me to have this job, make this much money, drive this car, because that's what I see, whether it's my parents or all around me. So the message that's being sent often, I think, is the right message from parents and educators. It's just not being received. I don't think it's not hitting home for a lot of young people. More pressure to be successful, to know and to not make a mistake, to not make the wrong choice, which we can all agree. There's no right and wrong choice. When you're going to university or college, there are some choices that are better for you, some that are not as good, depending on who you are, where you live, what you like. But there's no right or wrong. But I hear this language all the time, all around me, from educators, parents, students themselves. So there's more pressure, they have less responsibility, they've taken on less, generally speaking, by the time they get there. They're focused on technology, which every high school teacher, if you ask them, they'll tell you communication skills and resilience are still on the decline, based on observation mostly, for people who work with these young people. And there's a concept called emerging adulthood. I don't know if any of you are familiar with this term. It's research that's come out in the last couple of decades. A researcher, a psychologist in particular, kind of introduced it, but a lot of surveys have shown that the markers for entry into adulthood are being delayed. In some cases a couple of years, in some cases many. So think about the average age when we marry. The average age when we first drive a car or get our license. The average age when we first work. The average age when we're able to walk to school on our own. All these things that happened, first job maybe at 16, 15, is now into the late teens, maybe early 20s. A lot of students are not even getting it. They say, I don't need a car, I don't want to drive. And they don't get it even by the time they're 18. Whereas my day, the day you were 16, you were signed up, right? You wanted the car. Even if you didn't have a car, you still wanted your license to borrow someone else's. So the confluence of all these factors, these are some, and other people would share others, I'm sure, but this has created what most people say a mental health crisis on university and college campuses, and it's shown in the research. So Discover Year is about prepping students for life, and that's how most of our students articulate it. It's education for life, which I like, and I think that's very true. I won't spend a lot of time, but just to reinforce the point, the mental health crisis is kind of evidenced. 65%, this is a 25,000 student survey that was done, I believe it was 2016, across Ontario campuses. 65% of students surveyed on college and university campus said at least one time in the last calendar year, I was overwhelmed with anxiety. 46% said at least one time in the last calendar year, I was so depressed I couldn't get out of bed for 24 hours. This number is hard to pin down because universities and colleges don't want us to know it, but roughly 14 to 20% of students drop out before the end of their first year in Canadian post-secondary institutions. And an interesting number from students themselves, 89% of students in a massive RBC career launch study, 89% said one thing that they would have changed and done differently is network better before they left university. So some of our parents here will have great stories for you about how that looks for their children. They felt like they had this education, they got into the working world. What happens? I can assure you, based on many conversations, I can't get a job, I don't know anybody. Oh, go back to school. Oh, I'll go get a master's because everyone else is getting a master's. I'll go and get an MBA, I'll go and do this program. Nothing wrong, we certainly are not against education in this program. We're very much for it, but we're all about purposeful education. And the whole point of our program, the whole reason that we founded it, is to help people thrive. And if you think about it and you reflect on it, I'm sure that you'll see most people in our world are getting by, which saddened me, and that's why I founded the program, because I think there's a beautiful opportunity to help people thrive rather than just putting one foot in front of the next to get a paper, which is how I saw things when I worked. I didn't mention this, I worked at the University of Ottawa. Great place, my wife works there, fantastic place to get an education, if and when you're ready for it. I'd like to start by saying here's why we started the program. Next thing is a little bit about how, because I promise you you'll leave tonight and you probably won't understand our program completely, because I've learned in 4 years, nobody ever does. And the students can't articulate it, it's very hard, it's very different. So I think it's helpful to kind of paint the picture of how we help and what we focus on. So there's a concept called prolonged exploration, book suggestion for anyone who's interested in nonfiction. Range by David Epstein. He's traditionally a sports author. This is a career development book. Some of you maybe read it or heard of it. I read all this stuff. This is what I read. By far my favorite book in the last couple of years. Basically, the book makes an argument for what he calls prolonged exploration. And the argument is flies in the face of the current trend, which is hyper-specialization in careers. And some of you may be thinking about picking courses in grade 9 and thinking about the ripple effect that will have on your young person's career many years down the road, which drives me nuts, but we're doing what we can. So prolonged exploration is kind of the theme of our program, and it's helping students take a little bit more time to build 3 fundamental pillars that are difficult to describe, but you know them when you see them: confidence, self-awareness, and adaptability. So if you ask many people in career development, they will name these 3 as 3 of the most important skills for success in the future, which we don't know what it holds, right? We don't know what's coming. And I know that the machines are not taking all the jobs, but there is going to be a shift in our economy, and we need to help our young people prepare for it. I love the stories. We don't have time to tell all of them, all of our students in the past. It's really cool now. Our first year was 4 years ago, so we're seeing the gains of the program more and more as each year passes. This young lady's name is Kate. She came into the program in our first year because one of her specific goals was to improve her self-confidence. She had actually graduated from the university already. She wanted to build self-confidence, be more comfortable around people, and kind of put herself out there. In our travel period, which is in February, which we'll talk about, students are encouraged to travel 4 to 6 weeks, but if that's not appropriate for them, if they want to do a shorter trip and they can articulate why, that's totally fine. Kate went to Boston for 4 days. My brother-in-law worked at Puma at the time. Their international office is in Boston. She's interested in fashion. We connected them. She went down, she toured the office, she met him. Her goals, and the students all have to have intentional goals about their travel, and her goals were to travel on her own. She'd never traveled anywhere in the world on her own completely. She wanted to learn what it was like to eat in a restaurant by herself, to hail a cab, and to explore a city where she knew no one, and maybe have conversations with strangers. 4 days in Boston. 4 months after the program, she picked herself up. She got a working holiday visa. She moved to Ireland, where she knew 0 people. She got a job at IBM Ireland in the span of 2 weeks. This in a world where all we hear is how difficult it is to get jobs, all the time. So the reason that Kate was able to do that is because she had built confidence. First of all, she went because of all the stories that our mentors told her about their travels and how meaningful those were to her and how much they learned. She went and she applied many of the things that she learned in the program and in her household and through her education generally, but she had the confidence to actually do that, whereas previous to that year, she wouldn't have. Self-awareness. This gentleman's name is Kamal. He's actually from Toronto, but he moved here also in his first year. He moved to Ottawa. His cousin is in the program, Josh. His aunt is here actually as well. Josh is on the other side, the cool room. Kamal came from Toronto, and when he arrived here, each student in our program has a coach. We call them life path coaches. They meet every month with their coachee. In the first year, I was actually the coach for Kate and Kamal. We only had 4 students. So it was early start. Kamal came to the program. First meeting I had with Kamal, I said, Kamal, what do you think about for next year? We're starting to explore. He said, Jay, don't worry about me. I already know what I'm doing. I'm going to be an airplane mechanic. Nothing wrong with being an airplane mechanic at all. If you met Kamal, if he was here tonight, you would see in 30 seconds, he is without a doubt probably the most artistic and creative person you have literally ever met. Certainly that was the case for me. So, and I told his aunt before he even started the program that this is what was going to happen. So, which is cool. Thank you for reminding me that. So Kamal, and it took every ounce of energy I had not to tell him, Kamal, you are not an airplane mechanic. I really had to go deep, but I didn't. And over the course of the year, each month when we would get together for our individual conversations, I would say, Kamal, what'd you get up to? And as an example, he would say, oh, what did I do this week? Oh, I was working at my overnight shift, and oh, yesterday I had the day off. I was skateboarding in the park. There was this guy there, we started chatting. He's from Toronto, he's in Ottawa. There's this guy ran into the park, seemed like a nice guy, told me he was having a party last night. I offered to DJ, so he said sure, and I went and I DJ'd this party, met a bunch of new people. It was a cool experience. I went home and wrote a poem about, this is a true story. I wrote a poem about it, I went home. Today I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna work on my record. He released an EP just after he left the program. And I would sit there and be like, come on, what are you saying? And then he was like, I'm going home to study for the airplane mechanics. Yes. And I said, okay, Kamal. And what was happening in this case is Kamal had what we call anchored, in career development we call it anchoring, to an idea. And there's a variety of reasons why I think he did that, but it was a stable income. He knew how much money you could make. He liked to work with his hands. He didn't understand what that meant though at the time. He just knew he liked to work with his hands. And so he was kind of cherry picking things in a world where he didn't really know a lot of different options. He hung to this one thing, which is what most students do. Now, 4 years later, after leaving the program, Kamal completed he went to school at the Toronto Film Institute. He starred in a documentary. He wrote his own documentary. He's now acting. He's a co-owner in a music studio. Do you get the picture? He's doing all kinds of, he helped raise the Toronto arts budget by $2 million or something. He was on a committee. So he's lived in Toronto, thriving is the only word that kind of comes to mind. It took him the better part of 1 year. It's not a weekend program. And that's what often we get the question about, why does this have to be a year? That's case in point. It takes young people time, which we don't often give them. Last story for now, Aurelia. She was in our second year. In terms of adaptability, Aurelia also was attached to a career. She wanted to pursue hairstylist. She wanted to be, I always forget the official name. She wanted to be a hairstylist. And nothing wrong with that, once again. Aurelia didn't care at all about hair. She didn't care about clothes. She didn't care about the way she looked. She looked nice, but she didn't wear makeup. She wasn't interested in that realm. It was just a total mismatch. Total mismatch. And again, I held it in and I said, oh, that's great, you're gonna do the hairstyles. And so her plan was to do an internship at the end of, in June, at the end of our year. She wrote an email to the place that had already agreed to take her on as an intern, starting in a month. She wrote saying, hey, I'm looking forward to getting started. Let me know what I need to do to prepare. They wrote back saying, sorry, Aurelia, no more space for you, bye. She said to her coach, 1 year ago, I would have felt like things were falling apart. Now I can see that things are falling into place. 18 years old. So, and I promise you at the beginning of the year, that would have been a breakdown for her, and she's happy to share that. She encourages me to say that she was going through anxiety, social anxiety, general anxiety, and she's thriving now. The last I heard, she was working, she got poached, her words, not mine. She was a barista at Second Cup, somebody from a top secret level department in the public service, I can't know which one. As a barista, this person said, you're doing an excellent job, I want you to work for me. And she did that for a little while. She now went back to school on the East Coast. So, just a few stories to kind of highlight after the fact. It takes time, but the students that come through our program, the skills that they develop and the confidence is life-changing for them. And sometimes our students need a couple of years, depending on what they've been through in their lives. Sometimes they would probably be ready to go after 4 or 5 months. But it's a one-year program to help them really get ahead. So the 3 essential pillars of our program in terms of what we do are experiential learning, self-discovery, and skill development. So the experiential component, largely this is an experiential program. What's different about us than many experiential programs is that usually the learning is always happening out in the outdoors or in the activity itself, or in the work. Our students have all those experiences, and then we help them synthesize the information during our weekly meetings. So they work, they travel, they have a community service project. In terms of work, lots of great questions. I'm sure I'll leave those questions to you all to ask specifics, but they work generally about 10 months out of the year. We start the program in July, and it's a full year program. It goes to the next June, and some of our students work more than 10 months in that span. It's student level jobs. We don't give them jobs. We don't hook them up with a sweet internship. We help coach them on how to go about getting their own job. It doesn't matter where it is. They'll find the job that fits their level of skill and confidence, which is not, the skill level's not high. They're high school graduates, they're young, so they're working retail, customer service. If they're able to have the skills to get a job as a programmer, great. They're not gonna get a job as a nurse because they don't have a nursing degree. So it's student level job. And a lot of parents will say, well, what's the value in that? And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but the value is actually helping them be an excellent employee, helping them do an amazing job at whatever the job is, and they take that and they apply that whatever they do in the future. And we all heard the term transferable skills. That's a real thing. It's very important. So they work, they make money, that's the big part. They make money and they apply the things that we learn every week in the job. They travel for the month of February. It could be up to 6 weeks, really kind of the end of January to the early days of March. Doesn't have to be that long. Some students want to squeeze every last drop out of the travel period, and others, like Kate, are not ready for that. So it's a very flexible program inside the parameters that we offer. We work independently with students to understand what's right for them. The one thing about the travel, 2 things. It's not a vacation, it's an adventure. So they're not expected to go sipping pina coladas on the beach in Cancun for 4 weeks, much to their dismay occasionally. And it should be something that they do with, it's not a family trip. So sometimes people ask, well, we've been planning this thing, myself and my daughter, or myself and my son, and we'd like to do that. That's fine for a part of the trip if that's something that you have as a goal, but the bulk of the trip should be either with other people their age, or new people, or on their own. Many of our students are absolutely not ready to go on their own. That's fine. They can do organized tours. We don't organize the trip for them. Our program is a coaching program, so we help them understand all the tools that they'll need to look at, and they sometimes, and parents come home and say, what are you talking about? And we talk about all those things, but sometimes the student's not ready to receive it. But they all learn in one way or another. Sometimes they're disappointed because they don't have the trip they wanted, because they didn't save right, or they didn't plan accordingly, and they are motivated to have a better trip next time. And that's totally fine. And I think that's a good lesson for some of them to learn. But generally they travel in February. Community service project is the students get together and identify what they're interested in doing in the community. It's not a volunteer thing where you go and sign up to do some role. They create the project themselves. They build it, they develop it, they implement it. It could be an awareness project, it could be a fundraiser, it could be little mini houses, book houses that they place around the city, which was the project in the second year. In the first year, as I described to the folks at this table, the students spent months working on what they called Career Kickstarter. It was a job search workshop for high school students. They wanted to impart the things that they had learned to help high school students get jobs. They worked very hard for multiple months, and they gave a wonderful presentation for one person. And that was it, right? And we hugged at the end, it was great. All of us, that one student as well. But it was great for them to learn, and they were very positive about it because we framed things in a positive way, and it was a great learning experience for them. But it doesn't matter what it is, it has to fit. There are loose parameters, and we explain those to the students at the outset of the year, but it's really two goals. Number one, help them learn how good it feels to do something for other people that you actually care about, and rather than checking off the 40 hours in volunteer service. And number two, it helps them build a lot of communication, collaboration, and resilience in terms of working with other people. Anything on those elements? Questions? Going once? Twice? We'll have a question period at the end as well. Yes?
Sorry, the community service part, is that worked on throughout the whole year, or is it?
Excellent question. Yeah, so it's variable dates of delivery, but we introduce it right at the beginning, give them some time, and we do have periods of time during our workshops where they can get together and brainstorm and work on it. They're expected to do the bulk outside of the program, but then they have to deliver it by the end of the year. In some cases, just after the year has ended, in the summer. Yeah. Yes?
With the travel, do you coach them as to how to possibly plan it, or safety, or things like that, like all those?
All of the above, yes.
Yeah.
Great question. So, and we'll talk more about the Discovery Days themselves, but they have an open forum, especially in the last part of the day. It's a 3-hour, what we call roundtable discussions, and that's to explore a lot of different things, but they can always bring their questions, concerns to that group. But in October, we have, our workshop is travel planning. Mm-hmm. So we have, one of our mentors has been to, I think, 70 countries. He's an international videographer, really cool guy. So he shares his experiences. He does a workshop on how to travel, be adventurous and safe. Some of the differences between traveling as a young man and a young woman. We talk about passports and visas and immunizations. We don't do any of that stuff for them. We bring it to their attention, and then they can have ongoing opportunities to have discussions about that. But most of them have no idea. They've never done this before. And the parents, of course, usually play a significant role, mostly pulling their hair out because the students are not planning like the parents would like them to in most cases, but we do coach them throughout. Yeah. Yeah. Yes?
So just a question about the community service. In your example, it sounded like it was a whole group thing. So is it always like that, or is it sometimes smaller groups that they break out into?
Very good question, yes. So the first 2 years we had a total of 4 students per year in the program, so it was only one project. Last year we had 24 students and I think 4 or 5 projects. So we encourage groups of 3 to 6. Yes.
What is the work schedule? Like, is it full-time, is it part-time, is it?
Totally up to the student, good question. So some of our students work like maybe as few as 10 hours a week. So as an example, a couple years ago, one of our students was on Team Canada for canoe kayak. He trained like 6 hours a day. So he didn't work 30 hours, he worked a part-time job. Other students want to make a lot of money and they work and they learn what it means to work 40 or 50 hours. And they had no idea what that meant before, now they do. So we encourage 30. Generally for the student level jobs, in our experience, they always ask what's your availability when the student is hired. So it's usually not an issue to miss the Wednesday. Sometimes they have a mandatory training or whatever, we're flexible with that. It's up to them to kind of make up the coursework. Question in the back?
Yeah, when it comes to the travel part, say they start doing the planning and financing and it's not successful for this 4 or 6 weeks that you can use for the travel, can they catch up and get it in the last 3 weeks of that time period, or do they have more than one opportunity if they were not successful in doing the travel with you all?
Very, very good question also, and they do have to go somewhere in February. So last year, there was a couple of students, one who, and these are interesting things again, like we don't pay attention to them in our society, but there's a huge amount of anxiety related to many aspects of the travel or the work or a variety of things. And it was coming time to travel and some students didn't have anywhere to go. So one student did a 4-day trip to Quebec City to explore the history there. And it doesn't have to be international, by the way, I didn't mention that. One student in our second year, she went to Carleton Place, Aurelia. She went to Carleton Place, had a mind-blowing experience because she wanted to live on her own. She'd never done that before. She did that an hour and a half away, came home on weekends. It's fine. If the student can articulate to us why that's important to them, it's no problem. They do have to go somewhere in February. Sometimes they don't do what they want though, and they do go on a bigger trip later. Or when they're in post-secondary afterwards. Yes?
Have you had experience of students who want to travel longer than 6 weeks?
We have, yeah. We confronted that a little bit last year, and we learned that it's important that they're here for the majority of the discovery days. We do have an online option as well, though. So our program is in Ottawa, and we also have a group online. So we extend the opportunity for them to join online for like maybe an extra week or two. But again, for sometimes people are like, well, I have this trip planned, or I want to go to this specific country or place, and it's not a good time to go in February. Then we would encourage them to do something shorter in February and plan for that trip later. All good questions. Thank you. Okay, so the self-discovery element of the program. So as I mentioned, each student in the program gets what we call a life path coach. These are wonderful people who have backgrounds in psychology, coaching, social work, sometimes not related to those fields at all, but they have the skills. They have good coaching skills. They ask excellent questions. They're compassionate people. These people are amazing, by the way. All of the people that are in our program, the volunteers, are incredible, but they get to meet with their coach once a month. The vast majority of our students have no idea what it means to have a coach. And they learn, and it's an interesting process sometimes at the beginning. But this is a person who's not a parent, not a student, not a friend. It's an impartial, caring person who will ask them questions that will help them navigate their own interests and values throughout the year. We do a whole host of personality, what we call inventories, exercises, questionnaires that help them understand their values, their interests, their preferences, their strengths, and we help them explore who are they hanging around with. Are these good people that are pushing them and supporting them and uplifting them, or are they people that are bringing them down? We have all those conversations, and the life path coach is the person that they can talk about those things with. And I would say at least 50% of the time the life path coaches don't talk about any of that stuff. They talk about whatever the student is feeling at the time. And there's some important things to be talked about. So again, nothing is mandatory in terms of the assignments that we give out in the program. We see that most of our students do the assignments. Sometimes they do them on I've learned this, 1.5 speed on the videos to speed things up a little bit, because 30 minutes is a very long time to watch a video. It's a different world, but they do these things. Sometimes they don't, and they're not ready for that, but they come and they show up every week and they share with the group, and that's fine. And there's lots of exploration through these exercises and in all the things they do throughout the year. Questions on that element? So understanding who they are, what they want, what's important to them. So very few people I've learned really, especially at that age, understand what's important to them, what they want. They are very focused on what others want. So we help them really understand, and not in a brash way that pushes everyone away, just in a real meaningful way that helps them understand how to integrate, how to communicate better with their loved ones, what they actually want and what they need. Yes?
So what sort of breakdown would you have between one-on-one activities with the coach versus group activities with their
Good question. So they meet with their coach once, well, we say once a month. Most of the coaches will do more than that, I think, a lot of the time. So they'll communicate via text. That's an hour a month. We meet every Wednesday. Well, if there are 4 Wednesdays in a month, we meet in person for 3 of them. The 4th one is their coaching day. And those, the discovery days are very long days. As the students will tell you, 9:30 in the morning till 6 p.m. And we are going the whole time. So our parents say, he or she came home famished and exhausted. So that unfortunately the parents don't get a lot of information at the end of the day, because the students have done a lot of hard work that they're not used to doing. Anything else? Yes?
I'm just curious the rationale of not demanding or insisting that they do the homework. What's the rationale?
Good question. The rationale behind not making our assignments mandatory. So I'll start by explaining what I see in the students that I have seen for 4 years. When we ask them to do work, one of the points of our program is to help them think on their own. It's a big part of what we do. I've learned that is sucked out of people, generally, by the time they're done our education system. Nothing against our education system. It's a big box. But they come here and we ask them to do assignments, and they continually say, what's the right answer? And I continually say, what do you think the right answer is? And I don't have the right answer. So our program is not based in, this is the correct equation, this is the answer to the question. Our program is based in helping them build intrinsic motivation. And sometimes it takes a longer time, but it would be, as our students generally say, would be a deterrent for them to fully engage if they were fearful of ramifications or repercussions about the assignment. We've debated it internally often, and I don't know if you're in education, but it's something that we've gone back and forth on, and we've decided on not obligatory. But they still have to be engaged and committed to the program. Yeah. And we do find that the number of people who do the assignments does increase over the course of the year, which I really like. Yes?
If I could just add on to that, I'm a current student right now, and doing the workshops and the homework that he does give us actually makes it better for us once we can come to the discovery days. So it's in our best interest to actually do them, but if the student doesn't do it, they're just missing out. So I think that's probably why the number does increase at time.
Yeah, and it's really cool because we have some excellent leaders in our group. Everyone's a leader in their own way. And this year we have people who are really pulling our students along who may not be quite as prepared or are quite honestly fed up of being told what to do for 13 years. Like, they haven't had a break. And I agree that we're not always doing them favors by telling what to do all the time. And this is a transition into adulthood, so we're helping them in a safe space develop the motivation to do it on their own. Thank you, Alex. Okay, skill development. This is, I'll tell you more about these days. Most times people have a difficulty in understanding what we do during our discovery days. So every Wednesday, as I mentioned, we come together, usually here. It may not be here next year. We're not sure yet, but it's one location. So if there are 4 Wednesdays in a month, sometimes there's 5, but if there are 4, the last Wednesday of every month is the coaching day. So we don't meet as a group. They align a session with their own coach. The other 3 days, 2 of those would be here at Pineview, and we have a full day of programming. One of those days would be what we call off-site. So an adventure in the community. We tour campuses. We go to Shopify as an example. We visit Escape Manor when you're into the Humane Society. We go to different businesses and campuses around town. And it helps the students really understand and visualize what the working world is like. Now that they have the time to think about university and college, they actually see the campuses, they actually have the time, and they tell us that all the time. I went here last year, but I just couldn't see it because I was worried about calc, and I was worried about my girlfriend or my boyfriend. I had all these other things I was thinking about. I couldn't see the campus. So it's really nice to be here now. So that's what we do one day. The other 2 days, and on those days we do tours, we meet people that work there, we interview them, do a variety of things. And then on the 2 other days we meet here, the basic structure of the day, we do something in the morning. We do a guided meditation for the first 10 minutes. Students, if they're not into that, they can leave. They don't have to participate. We strongly encourage it. It's just like Headspace, or if you've ever heard of those apps, we do one of those for 10 minutes to set the tone for the day. We do what we call micro-coaching, so students work in 3s, and based on the skills that we've helped them develop, they further develop their communication skills by interviewing each other and giving observations about how they're doing in terms of their inquiry, how they're communicating what they have to share, and they build a lot of positive emotions and relationships. Then we have a workshop. Some of our workshops relate to emotional intelligence, intercultural awareness and communication, public speaking. And most students come into our program probably being able to name ballpark 20 jobs. There are 35,000 or something in the official database in Canada, so they learn about all kinds of things that they didn't even know existed. And they meet all kinds of really cool people that have done interesting things and just want to help them. It's really inspiring for them. That's 2 hours, and then the last couple of hours, each day they have these roundtable discussions at these tables, 5 or 6 students and 1 facilitator, and they work on their communication skills, they share updates, they troubleshoot what's happening in their lives, what's happening in their work, they learn how to ask good questions, and how, more than anything else, they learn how important it is to not only tolerate differences in others, but to embrace differences and how much joy that can bring, and how much benefit it can bring to your own life when you really accept and appreciate people for being different, rather than judging. And it's amazing to see our students make those connections. It's really, really exciting. I know that's a lot, I apologize. It's just like, everything in my brain is like, Jay, too much information, but people ask these questions. So I apologize. Again, sorry, not sorry, I guess. Any other questions on the discovery days? Yes.
You said like, might not be here. Do you have an idea, like, when east or do you have?
Good question. I think we'll go west if we do. So Pineview might be, I don't know if it's on the deal. Yes. Yeah, we definitely won't go east. We do get a lot of folks from the west who make the request to kind of maybe go a little bit farther central. So that's what we'd be looking to do. But we don't know yet. They might be tearing down and rebuilding. That's the kind of the variable. We hopefully will know soon. We might even rent our own place. Yes.
Is there a cap of the number of students that you admit into the program?
So it's growing every year. So the question was the cap, the maximum capacity for the program. And next year, the ballpark would be around 50. And that would include Ottawa and the online program. Yeah, so the goal will be, I think, about 40 students in person, which based on the feedback we've had and the number of people that are here tonight, at this stage of the game, in the past there were fewer people. So it'll always remain very personalized though. The roundtable discussions, that will always be the way, 4 to 6 people in a discussion. It'll never be a situation where people come and we do this. Basically, this will never happen. Our students hate this, we learned, and we don't do it. It's much more interactive, hands-on, conversational.
How about the online program? Have you been doing that before, and how does it work?
Good question. Online program. So last year was a pilot program. We had 2 students in the GTA. The truth is that we tried to get things going in the GTA. We're not funded, so we just didn't have the capacity, the resources to really do what we should have. So we had 2 people, learned a ton. This year we have 3, also all around the GTA. It's going fabulously. We changed the way we do that model. So Lauren is our manager of the program in Toronto. She's now the online manager. She facilitates most of what we do here. They also have access to the career panels, so they interact. Those panelists will jump on the computer and interview them. But it's going really well. And students that do have, if the benefit of that is if they're homesick for the day, or if they're out of town on a family trip, or they have a concert they're going to see, they can jump online with that group, as long as they give us advance notice. Yeah. Yes?
Just something you could elaborate on. I'm not sure if you touched on it, but how we get assigned to our life path coaches.
Thank you, Alex. Yeah, so the life path coaches, it's a bit of a mystery still. We have all these amazing coaches, and we're gaining more coaches. In fact, we have a bunch of coaches who don't have any students in preparation for higher numbers. So what happens is we have a tool that we use called Bank Codes. It's a values-based communication style tool. The students complete that. And based on my experience with the students in the orientation week and my knowledge of all the different coaches, we kind of match people that way. And it's possible to change coaches. In some cases it doesn't work for a variety of reasons. It's rarely happened, but sometimes it does. And we can make switches for the students if it's not working with their coach. But basically it's an alignment in my purview of what are this person's values, what are their interests, what is their communication style, and try to match those 2 things up.
Are these like certified coaches?
Not in all cases, not all certified coaches, yes. Good question. So, and it's more of our coaches would say, those that are coaches or counselors would say it's a coaching mentorship role. It's not a pure coaching role, because our students they're not ready for that. But they are people, we have a boot camp, we have a training, we have monthly meetings with all these folks. They're amazing, they're amazing. They all have all the skills, they're just not certified. And we help them understand, what signals to look for if there's mental health distress and that kind of thing. Yes?
So is the program front-end loaded in terms of giving them skills and coaching them and how to get a job?
It is. Yeah, so the summer months that we didn't speak about the summer months. Orientation is in July. It's usually the second week of July, around the 8th or so to the 14th, 13th. And that's a 5-day intensive period where we help them kind of launch. And in advance of that, they have an opportunity to have individual coaching on their resume. And we have a video module on how to build your resume, all those things. If we go to the mall during that period, we hand out resumes, and everybody sweats intensely. And they learn what it means to actually ask for a business card, and they do it wrong 50 times, and then on the 51st time, they actually do it right. And some of them are fine with that, and others really have a difficult time due to a variety of things. So yeah, we focus on the job search elements early and basic communication skills, and it's always a struggle to think, like, what do we do first? These are all so important, but we focus on the job search first. Yes. All great questions. Thank you for asking. Just briefly say, so the what component of this session is twofold. It's one, what we do, like what the actual program is. The far more important thing, in my opinion, is what kind of culture and environment we offer our students. And as I mentioned, I make a living doing training and speaking and that kind of thing in the corporate sector. And I've worked with hundreds of groups, and I've been in all kinds of educational settings. I have never seen another environment where people are so open, so compassionate, so welcoming, so understanding, and so driven to help as the people that work with us, and in fact our students. We're admitting based on character. So every person that comes here, literally, it's kind of a joke, but I've never been to a place that's so open, honest, supportive. Like that's what every person who comes in here as a visitor or as a first time, they all leave and say the same thing, wow. Like Anna, she's from Portugal. She's one of our international students this year. She's in the other room. She was like, you could see on her face, she's like, I can't even believe that this person was just talking about their addiction, and this person was just sharing how, you know, they had a breakup with their boyfriend or girlfriend, like pouring their hearts out on the first day that they meet. So it's a very unique environment, one that students are unaccustomed to, and some of them are very comfortable right away, and others take a little longer. But the people that we introduce your children to are second to none, I promise. And I know a lot of people. So that's a really cool part. I think that's the most important. If we did none of the last slide, if we did none of this stuff, and we just came and your young people were with these people every week, in my personal opinion, it would be well worth the investment. Yes?
How many applicants did you have for the program
Last year, we had, it's a good question. I'm not a numbers guy. I would say there were probably 5 or 6 more than we admitted. And some of those students chose not to do the program who were admitted. One student was not admitted because we didn't have the resources. It was someone who had pretty significant challenges and we couldn't have supported them properly. But generally, most of our students that apply, if they make the effort of applying, they're usually a good fit. Yeah, so we're looking for character. We do have an admission slide here. Oh, it's an excellent segue, actually. So if we were to chart, so people often ask the question, who is this program for? Jay, how do I know if my young person is appropriate or not for the program? So if you want to, on the y-axis, academic achievement, and on the x-axis, social, emotional, self-management skills, which are 2 kind of typical markers in our society for how young people are doing, generally at a snapshot, this is what our class would look like. So it literally could be, we have students who have 98% averages and could choose any post-secondary option they want, and have no major mental health barriers, no learning challenges, and are socially kind of integrated and cope really well. And we have other students who have had major trauma in their lives, either recently or in their past. A lot of our students do have learning challenges, and it's sad and uplifting at the same time, because when they come in, you can see that they've been battered by the system and they think that they're unintelligent, and they really, really are. And sometimes they have mental health challenges. Sometimes that's recent, sometimes it's longer spanning. It's not a therapeutic program, which is important to say. It's an educational program, but I would say that we butt right up against kind of the outer extremity of that. So a lot of the conversations that we have here we don't do therapy, but they're very involved, very kind of vulnerable conversations. And that's kind of who. So the goal is that we admit as many students as we can, to be honest with you. We want to be as inclusive as we possibly can, but it's really essential that students who come into the program come with the right attitude and that they want to be here. Because otherwise, everything falls apart. If there's one student who's not enabling others to feel safe and to share and to contribute, that's a big no-no for us. So the requirements, there's an application form, you can fill it out. It's all on there's an apply page on the website. Fill out the form, the student, fill out the form. Personal statement is 800 to 1,000 words. Essentially, we just want to understand why they want to do the program. And we've learned it's pretty easy to tell who's doing this because they think they should or someone wants them to, and who really wants to be here. And sometimes they progress from being someone told them to be here to they want to do it in the span of the application. But we need, so just to do that alone, most students, they don't really want to be here. They're like, I'm out. 2 references, one academic, one from school, and one community-based. Could be a coach, could be a friend, family friend, etc. And then if you are admitted into the interview process, based on these aspects, the interview is pretty informal, but we want to get to know the students. Sometimes it's in person, sometimes it's online, depending on the timing. But that usually happens. So our deadline for admission in the first round, what we call the first round, there's no application fee, by the way. Something that might change in the future, but Not yet. So it's free to apply, just takes effort. January 19th is the end of the first deadline. So that means if you apply by January 19th, it's equal consideration. At that point, if we fill up by that point, everything's up in the air. I honestly don't know that we will, but I strongly encourage anybody who's really considering it to apply early by January 19th. Usually we review the applications. We have interviews in kind of February. Offers go out March-ish as soon as we can, and then students are asked to make their deposit and sign the contract for the program by April if they do want to reserve their spot. And then we remain open until applications, if there's space, until June 1st. And in fact, we have had some late applications as well, if there's still room. Yes?
How does that line up with university applications? So in terms of, you know, if one of the APs young adults applies for this program as well as university, how does your timing line up with their ability to make a decision if they're offered both?
Yeah, so generally we lag intentionally. So, because that's the reality for some of our students. And they'll often have usually until, it does vary depending on the institution and the province, but usually they have kind of until May. If maybe you already know, is that correct? It's a ballpark.
Yeah, I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
People may have thought, but I'm
Yeah.
not sure. This is new for us too.
Yeah, usually May. I thought you might work but usually for universities and colleges, they have until around May. Depends on the program. Now, some programs will never fill up and they can take a lot of time. Other programs are very tight for space, the more hotly contested ones. Another question that people often ask, sorry.
I'm not positive about this, but I'm pretty sure that most universities, if you're accepted, you can postpone it for a year.
So that's a really interesting topic that comes up. I can speak for the University of Ottawa. They don't liberally hand out, just because I used to work there, I work for said they don't offer deferrals for no reason, what they would consider no reason. It has to be usually a health reason. Some schools are more proactive and they will grant you a deferral for a variety of reasons. But a lot of Canadian institutions will say that they're starting to do this more. I don't see it, to be honest. It's an interesting conversation that we'll save for another day. But there's certainly no Harvards in Canada yet who proactively encourage gap years. But you ask the individual offices. And if you're doing concurrently post-secondary applications and discovery year, you have to phone. Everybody generally wants the easy answer, but every institution's different. So call the admissions offices, yeah.
And what is the deposit?
Deposit is $1,000. Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about financing in a second. So just to recap the timelines, the students are admitted, so generally in the spring, some of them will be admitted in June. Program starts with orientation in July, and then we have a couple of sessions in August as well, what we call the Job Search Boot Camp. September to January is the first work term, where they're generally working throughout the week, and we're meeting every Wednesday. What we call the travel period is in February, so 4 to 6 weeks, end of January to early March. March to June is the second work term. So March until the end of June. Again, I'm not necessarily doing different jobs. Some students keep the same job. Some students do 2. Some students have done up to 6 jobs because they got fired from one and they quit another and they're learning a lot of things on the way. That's all fine and good. So the second work term, as we call it, March to June, and then the community service project needs to be delivered by the end of the year. And usually it is later. It takes them a lot of time to plan and execute that whole thing. Any other questions on that? Yes?
Do kids have to start in July? Like my daughter is planning on traveling in July. Could she still do the program then? Or?
Good question, yeah. So some of our students, of course, summertime is a big time for travel. We have lots of students that have missed parts of the travel or the summer. It's really important to bond with the other students early on. So I would say sometimes our students miss the orientation or the job search in August. I wouldn't recommend meeting. If you're going to miss the whole summer, I wouldn't recommend that. But it's conceivable. Sometimes we admit students late. And when I asked our students this year, some people were applying late, and I said, what do you think? Should we admit people late? And they were like, yeah! Only if they really want to be here, though, Jay. Only if they want to be here. So really, there's a lot of flexibility, but I do strongly encourage them the stuff that we cover in the summer is really important. They can make it up online, too. If they like all this stuff is online. Yes?
In terms of job search, the ones who are already working part-time and who usually ramp up in the summertime and have the possibility of going full-time, do you let them do that, or would you rather they switch jobs?
Yeah, so it's a great question, again, and what we do is have conversations with those students to understand, is it possible for them to get that week off? from their job. If it is, then we would encourage them to sure keep working there if they enjoy it and it's fun and they're making money, no problem. If they're gonna have to miss all of our sessions in the summer, you know, it's never happened, to be honest. Usually most employers, depending on the work, will allow the student to miss a little bit of time. But we do encourage students to continue in the same job if they're learning new things and they're progressing. And some students, as I was explaining to this table here, some of our students, it's better for them to keep the same job because they're working on a whole lot of other stuff on the side, mental health stuff or family stuff or personal stuff, and it's better for them to have that consistent job. Other students are like, hey, I want to try a bunch of stuff. And in that case, we encourage them to pursue different things. But generally, in 4 years so far, we haven't had any major issues. People do miss some of those sessions, and like, who am I to say don't go on a family trip? I think it's great. Like, part of our program is travel, so do it. We just want to kind of understand that they're committed to the program in a deliberate way.
The Discovery Days happen during the summer, like the 1 day a week, is that?
So it's different over the summer. It's the 1 week in July, usually the second week.
There's that.
And then there's 2 online sessions for 2 hours in the evening around the end of July. And then mid-August, we have a 2-day session. Yeah. Okay, so really quickly, somewhat quickly, financing. So just to help people a little bit better understand the picture. So over here, the entire pie is the expected income if a student follows our advice and gets a job and works about 30 hours a week. It's roughly $17,000 for the year, for the 10 months. Maybe more, maybe less, depending on the student. That's at $15 an hour, by the way, 30 hours a week. So Discover Your fees next year are $6,400, roughly represented by the green part in the pie here. And the travel expenses are not included. Some students spend $1,000, some spend $10,000, depends on them. We're not here to tell you what to spend or how to spend it, but the travel fees are not included. So generally speaking, $17,000, rough average, $3,000 to $4,000 most of our students, I would say, spend on the travel period, so it comes out to about $10,000, so they should be potentially saving $7,000 to $8,000. The way that we build the financing is there is a deposit, it's $1,000, but the hope, and I don't know how often it happens, the hope is that the students are paying for the program as they go, and sometimes their parents have to loan them a little bit of money at the beginning, but they hopefully are paying for the program with the money that they're earning. So they should have a net gain in most cases in the year. Not a lot of them are great savers, as you already know, some of you. So that's why we built it. So there's 2 options for payment. There's the deposit, and then you can do 2 lump sums, one in July and one in December 1st, or you can do post-dated checks, whether it's the parent or the student, and the student sometimes pays the parent. But the goal is that either it's feasible for you to work that amount and pay the program yourself, or your family has the means, or you would potentially get a bursary as well. So we do have financial aid. That information is on the website as well. We introduced internships this year, and we'll offer 5 of those. So bursaries are based on need. Internships are based on application, so students can submit an additional application for what we call an internship. It's $1,000 at $15 an hour. I want to say it's 66 hours of work that they do for us. So an opportunity for them to contribute to our group and help pay for some of the fees as well. Parents love this part. So 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, we were approved by ESDC, by the Canadian government, as an official post-secondary program based on what we offer. So you can use RESPs. The tuition is also a tax credit. So for many Canadians, $6,400 is diminished significantly because you get a chunk of that back as a family. If you're reporting that you're paying for the program, that's up to you to decide. But it is a nice break, so the actual cost to families is generally less than $6,400. Any questions on the finances? It's something that people are a little hesitant to ask about a lot of the times. So I'd like to share information because we live in generally a public education system in Canada, and most people don't know the actual cost of post-secondary, and I think that it's important to share that. So similar programs to ours, I would say, based on knowing a lot of programs like Dale Carnegie, Learning Tree, the University of Ottawa Institute for Professional Development. What we do is at least on par with, I know these programs, I know people who do them, I teach in them. And what we do here is absolutely on par with those places. and they generally charge $500 to $800 per day for a full day of a workshop. We have Discover Your 36 course days, full days, 12 individual coaching sessions, and none of this is individual coaching, by the way. This is all 10 to 20 people, and we have 10 excursions in the community. I'm no mathematician, but that's kind of $20,000 to $25,000. That's the value. That's the honest value of this program. And we live in a place where nobody pays that for post-secondary if you're domestic, so people find a little bit difficulty in understanding that sometimes. But everyone who goes to university or college in Canada is being subsidized 2/3 to 3/4. This has nothing to do with our program. I just feel it's important to share that, because a lot of people hear our tuition and think it's a lot, which I understand, but it's actually far less than the market value of what we're offering. Differentiators between us and these other people, none that I know of have one facilitator for 5 people in the program. We also have this amazing network of 100 people who are just enthralled to help our students, and they work in all different domains, different aspects of careers, and they're available for the students to explore. We talked, we're already over time, so we talked Ottawa or online, both are possible. If you live in Ottawa, chances are you'll probably want to do the in-person program, but the online option is available for those that might be planning on living elsewhere throughout the year. We have taken a lot of questions, and I'll leave it at that for now, and what I'd love to do is hand over the microphone to other people for a change. So feel free to grab a refreshment. Let's take 3 minutes. A quick 3-minute break, and then we will have some of our parents and one of our students up here, and you can ask them any questions you have for them. Okay, so let's do 3 minutes.
I'd like to tell a story about my son choosing his international trip. Just want to give you a little, I'll frame it first. When Michael was interviewed for the program, I think Jay can tell you the story. Jay asked him a bunch of questions, and there was a lot of, I don't know, yeah. So Jay had to actually call his references to figure out who Michael was. Absent-minded professor is definitely Michael's MO before he joined the program. So as Jay said, there's only 4 people in the program initially. Immediately, Michael decides, and this is a kid, in French it's a tête à la lune, you see his head's in the cloud most of the time. I see a bunch of people nodding their heads, so if your kid falls into this category, you'll find this story very entertaining. Michael decides early on he's going to do the Camino, the trail in Spain. It's kind of a spiritual hike of about anywhere from 500 to 800 kilometers. And Michael decides early on he's going to do this hike in the winter by himself. So I thought it was a joke at first. We finally convinced a friend of ours to send his son, who was doing a victory lap in high school, doing a grade 13, to go on this trip. And his friend is as absent-minded as he is. So we put him on an airplane at Ottawa International Airport, and Heather was crying, and I was kind of laughing, and I kind of looked at Heather and I said, I don't know if we'll ever see him again. It was 4 weeks of this guy with a backpack.
Yeah, we didn't know what his plans were. We didn't know what his ticket, like when he was leaving, what time, where is he going, where is he traveling to. And this is a kid that gets lost on the OC Transpo. I wish I was joking. Gets on the wrong side of the street, doesn't get off because he's reading, gets lost, never calls for directions. Phone's always dead, he never looks at it or charges it, so.
Yeah. This kid will live till he's 150. Nothing bugs him. So if your son or daughter falls into that class, this program is a game changer for them. And it was for Michael, and that's why our kids are very different, and our daughter, who's younger, is in the program this year, is much different. She's much more mature for that age than Michael was. She kind of has an idea of what she wanted to do, and it's just a different, each kid is unique, and there's different reasons for joining the program, but in our opinion, 17, 18 is just too young. It really is for first year university. We've all stood around at work, and I was talking to Victor a couple minutes ago. You're talking to colleagues and friends, and they say, you know, my son just dropped out of first year university, and in my head I see you know, the 10 grand that you just spent on it, and you're wondering, is there a way to kind of reduce that risk? You're not going to eliminate it. The program's not a silver bullet. It just happened to be for our son. For Grace, it was just an opportunity to take a year and do some self-discovery. So the Camino trip, we're still getting bits and pieces of the trip, because when he got off the plane, he was 10 pounds lighter, and he's not a big guy. So he didn't eat for 4 weeks, and but we let him go. You just got to let him go, and he came back a different person. He really did. There was a lot less of him, and his feet were a mess. And if you ever Google the Camino Trail, you'll know exactly what he did, and it was quite a journey for them. We were at the cottage with the young man that he went with, and this is 3 years ago, and they finally told us we got lost for the first 14 days. Every day they got lost. They went in the wrong direction. It was winter, so the markings of the trail were all covered in snow, and they were lost every day.
They learned a lot.
Yeah. So Grace wants to go to Hawaii for her. So I'm not asking Jay to step in on that one, but I'm asking you to step in on that one. So, anyways, any questions on the travel? Because that was what I remember from 2016, right?
Yes,
Was 2017, yeah, was the thing. And Michael absolutely loved the program, and he loves Jay. They stay in contact to this day, and it's absolutely a game changer for us. So, yeah.
So we took the trip in February.
Yeah.
Started the program in July.
Yeah.
So he already picked up some skills. Who he was before.
Yeah. I guess he did for sure. Like Michael had never worked before the program, so Grace has had part-time jobs. Michael is a different kid, so it took him a month just to find a job, and I kept on saying, what are we paying Jay for? Is he not supposed to get him a job like that? I didn't know what the program was, so I just assumed that Jay was going to hook him up with some internship somewhere, and an accounting firm. He wants to be an accountant, so and now he's got a co-op with MNP, a big firm in Ottawa. He's in third-year commerce at Carleton. His marks are actually better in university than they were in high school, so got the job himself. He walked in there, and for an introvert, he walked in and engaged one of the partners, and he said, I'm not hiring, but let me introduce you to somebody else. And he ended up with a 3-month co-op, and they re-signed him for a second co-op and throughout the summer. So starting in January, he'll work right through to the end of August in an accounting firm. So, you know, it's he went from having a hard time getting dressed most days to wearing a suit to work with a laptop bag, and I'm like, what the hell happened? And this is we attribute a lot of that to the program. So, yeah, that's.
Sorry, Dave, if you don't mind. So one thing that's, I think, unless you're in that environment, it's hard to appreciate. So Michael, in co-op offices at university, they have job boards. That's what I did as a role at the University of Ottawa for 3 years. We go out and we liaise with employers to get them to hire students. Michael said, most students are upset if there are not good enough jobs posted. Michael said, forget about the board, I'm gonna go. He walked into MMP, introduced himself, and convince them to hire him. And it's hard to appreciate how particular that is if you don't live in that realm. It is
or if you don't know Michael.
Yeah,
He's an introvert.
Yeah.
By nature, he's an introvert. And by the end of the 10 months of this program, I would now call him an extroverted introvert from the skills that he learned here. And you know, when he knew he had to get this job, he just was like, I can do this. I've done this. I've been trained how to do this. I practiced doing this. I have been successful doing this. I'm just going to go and do this. And he went out and got his own job because of the things that he learned here.
Thank you. Why don't we hear from, if there are particular questions? Yeah.
I guess I'm just wondering, because Michael sounds a lot like what my son is, and I think part of what my fear is that he wouldn't necessarily have buy-in. He doesn't buy into anything, but I think this would be awesome for him. So, you know, did Michael buy into it? Did he want to be here? Did you sort of have to convince him?
Michael had the 3 options for that year. I was put my court table, have already heard the story, but I had gone to see his principal and said, geez, like, they need 6 credits to graduate. They need to take a language. Some schools require you to take religion. My kids went to French school, so they had to take French and English. You have 4 credits left to graduate. He took a course in September and he was like, oh my gosh, I love philosophy. And then come February, he took accounting. He's like, oh my God, I love accounting. I went to see the principal, I'm like, how are you supposed to know what you kids are gonna like until they take something? Can he come back next year? She said, he's a great kid, he can come back next year if he wants. So I said to him, bud, like, you have an opportunity to take 6 other things you've never taken before. Go take construction, take law, take philosophy, take whatever you want, doesn't matter. 6 brand new things to try. And he also had applied to university, he got in to the commerce program, and then he applied for this program and he got in. I said, you have 3 choices, do what you want. We'll support you, whatever you want to do what you want. And he said, I want to do Discover Europe. Fantastic.
Buy-in's an interesting concept, right? That there's you wonder how much impact we have. Michael's very coachable, so, and Heather's a good salesperson, so I think there was a bit of that, but Grace was, yeah, I'm doing that.
And she's a completely different kid. We were like, you know, we could see the value of what he learned here. It was night and day. He really came into his own in this program. He became himself here and in the environment that was set out. And but with Grace, she had a completely different personality, and we had no intention even that she might want to do this program. But right out of the gate, she's like, no way, I'm going to Discover You next year. If I get in, you know, this is what I want to do. And she's learned a completely different set of skills because she had holes in, you know, where Michael didn't, and he had holes where she didn't. So it really.
And she's talking about majors now, where she didn't before. She kind of knew, and I put some pressure on them. I've always said to my kids, you can be one of 5 things, right? Doctor, lawyer, accountant, you know, the typical 5. You try to set the table so that when they move out, they don't come back, right? That's kind of right? So I'm going to pay for 4 years of university, you do what you want with it. If you mess it up after 1, it's on you. We're going to try to set you up as best we can for the future. And we felt that this was, I didn't know there was one to pay for the program.
Cat's out of the bag.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, both of you. I'd love to hear from, we have questions for all the panel or for particular ones. Let's take those in a minute, but I would love to just hear quickly from Alex, Kelly, and Alma, your perspective on the program.
Do you ever have some? I might want to think about this.
Okay, think about it?
Yeah,
sure, absolutely.
Big question.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Alma, and my son Joshua was one of the first graduates of the program. I have to say to everybody that I was the biggest skeptic of the program when Joshua came home from school. That he went to the meeting at school, and he was very convinced he wanted to do the program, and he wasn't sure what he wanted to do after school. He really wasn't sure. And after my first son had done something similar and didn't work out, I was a little worried, and Joshua, as I said, was very convincing, and I asked his guidance counselor at school whether he had attended that particular meeting, and he said yes, and he advised that Joshua did it. Fast forward, I went to the meeting, and I walked into the meeting at the school, and I met with Maura, who is also part of the program, but she works with me at CRA, and I felt I knew somebody I knew, so maybe, you know, it might be worth to listen to what was going to be presented. After the presentation, JD and some mentors he had there, some coaches he had there, I was convinced. Fast forward to today, I am the biggest advocate for the program. I advise it for everybody. Joshua was a pretty decent kid, but the skills he learned from the program has taken him so far, like beyond my expectations. He's now 21. He's a third-year student at Carleton University. He's doing computer science and psychology. He's pretty good with his money. He's learned about money management here. He's a very public speaker now. He was a very shy kid growing up, very, 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 very shy. Almost an introvert, but I guess something came out of him. And now he is speaking to big crowds like this, and at work, he works at CRA, he's a student at CRA as well, a student employee at CRA. He got his job on his own, applied for SWEP. He had 3 interviews. He got all offers for all 3 jobs. He chose to do the business side. He's already spoken to his director. On his own, went to his director and said he wants to do the programming side. And she's going to help him to get him to see if you're here, hopefully. Yes, so his progressed really well. I'm very proud of him. I'm very proud of this program. I have no doubt, I have nothing negative to say about the program. All I can say is don't expect the program to change your child overnight. It's going to, your son, your daughter overnight. It's going to take their effort, their work, they have to put in the time, practice the skills that they are taught, and learn from each other. But honestly, 100%, like no doubt, you won't regret it. If your son or daughter would do the entire program, you will see the difference over time. The travel, he went to Germany for travel, he went to Denmark to travel as well. Learned a lot of skills, he was on his own. I was nervous like crazy, I was so nervous he was a big country, I don't know many people over there, but he did well, so I am very proud of him and I'm proud of the program and I totally support it, 100%. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Hi, good evening. My name is Kelly Tabor, and my daughter Autumn is currently in the program right now. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of background. So I'm a mental health worker, I'm a social worker by training, and the reason why I'm telling you that is I'm actually going to pull on something from my work. For those of you who might know who Carl Rogers is, he's a person-centered American psychologist who is into person-centered counseling or founded it, and also humanistic approaches to counseling. And he acknowledges that we do best and we're most likely to thrive when we are able to trust our own judgment. And anything that enhances our ability to trust our own judgment can help us grow and thrive. And so why I'm sharing that piece with you is a year ago, it was really challenging watching Autumn try to figure out what she wanted to do. In this, after graduating high school, she was struggling with she knew she wanted to go to post-secondary, but she truly had no clue what she wanted to take in post-secondary. She felt the pressure of her peers because she said, Mom, everybody knows what they want to do. Everybody's going to university. I'm the only one, it seems, that doesn't know what they want to do. And as a parent, it's so hard to watch your child struggle in that way, right? You just want to see them grow and thrive and do well. So it took a lot of courage for her to be able to decide, I'm just gonna actually listen to this and not follow the path that everybody else is gonna go on, and just trust my judgment and be able to take my time. And so quite frankly, after learning about Discover Year, I truly was more excited about the program than Autumn was. She was kind of ambivalent about it, not 100% sure. And I would say that she's kind of slow to get started with engaging in something like this. But it's early days in the program, and what's really neat to see is I'm already seeing just her coming across as more capable, feeling more confident in what she does. And I didn't tell her this, Jay, so maybe don't pass this on because she's not here tonight. But I was just even watching her at Metro interact with people, and I was like, who is that? Like, just engaging with people. And she comes across, she's like, Mom, I've got all my best customers and my favorite people, and we're connected. And she tells me like how she engages with the people. She's a cashier at Metro right now. But there's a side of her that's coming out, and it's this ability to be comfortable in her own skin. And that truly is a gift, because if there's one thing that I can see and that I'm hopeful for after this year, is that she is able to, instead of choosing what her next step forward is, choose it not out of obligation, but rather out of a sense of knowing. And so to be able to watch just the beginning steps of this is pretty exciting, which I'm super grateful for.
Awesome, thank you, Kelly. And current student, Alex, last but certainly not least.
Did you want to ask your question?
I did, actually. I just wondered if you could tell us how you changed as a result of what you learned in the program, or if you felt
I'm just going to go on the question that Jay asked, and it'll segue right into yours. I just want to start off by saying thank you to all of you. The reason why I'm saying thank you is because personally, my parents do not agree with me doing this program. So already that you guys are here and are interested to learn about the program and that are, I would like to think, willing to support your children in making this decision, I want to thank you, because already that support is way more than what my parents gave me, and it'll help them way beyond this program, and they'll trust you guys later on in life to help them go through whatever they have to. So thank you. I'd like to start off with that. But for me, I think the question was what the program meant to me.
Yeah.
So to me, I went straight out of high school into university. I went into astrophysics at Carleton University. Went there for a semester, and straight off the bat, it was not my jam, and I did not think that I would enjoy having a career in that field, and I did not want to spend 4 years of my life and over $40,000 into something that I will, quite frankly, never use, and I will waste 4 years of my life being miserable. I think the way I explained it to my parents is that I want to be able to be on, sorry, this is kind of sinister, but my deathbed, and be able to say, you know what, I did it my way. Like Frank Sinatra, for some people who do know that. And yeah, I spent, I think, 3 to 4 months speaking with people from the program, whether it's Joshua, whether it was shaking Jay's hand for the first time. That was my solidifying moment. And I spoke with Julia, which is the program coordinator. I think I spoke with 2 Julias, actually. And yeah, I went out of my way and I took my time to make this decision to join this program. And it has been, so far, the best decision in my life. And now to segue into your question, how has that changed me? Bit of a story. It's quite a long story, and I don't want to take too much time, but I did go on a trip this summer with Anna, which is one of our international students. And my life path coach is actually the one that got me into this program, and she planted a seed. The seed was curiosity. And this is something that we do somewhat explore in the program, and it has been the #1 thing that has changed my life. The curiosity to know more about myself, the curiosity to explore other people's lives, the curiosity to know about the world itself. And during that trip I went on a 2-week road trip to New Brunswick, and I took Anne with me, which I've known for, I think it was a month at the time. It was a risk for both of us, but it was really rewarding. And we went to, I don't know if ever you guys have been on the East Coast, but have you ever been to King's Landing? It's kind of like an Upper Canada village, but on the East Coast. And yeah, we followed our curiosity and asked the historians that were there and the people that were in the village a bunch of questions because we were just curious to learn about the environment. It took us 4 hours to do half the place. Just because we wanted to talk to people, and we ended up, the first lady we talked to, she ended up saying all the special little details about the artifacts that she knew about that she normally wouldn't like bother talking to people, because most people just come in and then go out. So she kind of feels like she's wasting her day. And by me just asking, like, how are you today? She ended up telling me that she worked at a Tim Hortons in an air base in Afghanistan. That's crazy. And that's just one of the, now, I think like a couple of hundreds of people that have been able to open up just by being curious. And that's one of like the many ways that I've grown in such a short amount of time. I'm still growing. So yeah.
Thank you, Alex. Yes, thank you. Sorry, just because we're 3 minutes past 9 right now, and I want to respect everybody's time. I will certainly hang around. I suspect that some of these folks will stay around for a few minutes if you want to ask additional questions. One thing that I just wanted to introduce that is coming, so this year we introduced a parent program in parallel with our Discover Year. So we have about a dozen parents that are participating in ongoing training, a program where we help them with their own professional development. That's what I do in life. And then 50% of the time we spend helping them better support their young people in the program. It's been brilliant, I think. I believe they would say the same things. So we're going to open that up to the broader public soon. So if you're on our mailing list, we'll send out details. That'll probably be starting in May. And the goal will be to help parents better support their young people in a meaningful way as they transition from adolescence into high school. So kind of grade 10, 11, parents of grade 10, 11-year-olds, that's kind of the target. But thank you all very much for being up here. One more round of applause for these folks, please. And as Alex said, a round of applause for your staff for being here. We really appreciate you coming. Thank you very much. Wonderful holiday season, and take care. Thank you.